My name is James Cameron. No, not this James Cameron, this James Cameron. I grew up in Coney Island, Brooklyn, New York. I now live in Virginia. But before all of that, I had another passion. I loved Rolls-Royces. Well, a few years ago, I accomplished my dream. I purchased a 1985 Rolls-Royce Silver Spur. And that's where the nightmare began. But it was through trial and error that I discovered that there was a way to actually purchase these cars and maintain them that could save the buyer of future cars like this thousands of dollars. Now that is the sound of power. Let's take a trip. Come on, come along with me. I have now taken that knowledge and will now share it with you. My name is James Cameron, and I want to welcome you to the Rolls-Royce and Bentley University Buyer's Guide. Let's start class. Well, how you doing once again, class? This is James Cameron, and I thought I would do something a little different on this episode. For our last number of videos, you've seen my new mechanic, Josh Wicks, doing work on my Rolls-Royce. Well, there's also a new fan of the channel. His name is Richard. He's in North Carolina. Shout out to you, Richard. And Richard has 5 classic Rolls-Royces, and he is a big, huge fan of Josh. So, I thought I would maybe put things together. I would do something for Richard and also give a little bit more background on Josh, since Josh has been working on my car, and you've seen a number of episodes where not only has he put in parts from Rolls-Royce, shout out to Zionsville Rolls-Royce, but also fabricating some parts on the car that also not only did the job, but of course also saves money. So, without further ado, let's now go to Josh. Hey Josh, how you doing?
Doing good. How you doing today?
Well, fortunately this time, every time I see you, if I see you, there's something wrong.
Yes, baby.
That might be good news for you, but not exactly for me. But I really do appreciate you. So I thought in this episode, what I would do is talk about you this time. People that have watched the channel have seen you do work. Mm-hmm. You've explained what you do. And I realized when I first met you and you started talking about the car and what you were going to do, that it would also be very good to film you doing the work on the car, because it just seems to be natural that you explain everything that you do.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, let me run some questions past you, okay? You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. First is the most obvious question, I personally believe. What got you started in fixing cars?
Fixing cars, I got into it with my dad. Just growing up, having to fix our own vehicles and everything like that. Him teaching me how to do like oil changes and brake jobs and stuff like that. And then watching Discovery Channel, the car shows on Discovery and stuff like that, seeing that, and then trying to find places around here that did it.
Okay.
I knew I always had a passion for working with my hands. I grew up doing construction with my dad as well. Mm-hmm. And I knew that that's not what I wanted to do with my life, so I was like, well, I like cars, so let me see if I can do something with that.
Okay, and let's start from there. So you got started, generally speaking, kind of following your dad.
Yep.
And it was a natural progression into that because you like working with your hands.
Yeah.
So it was a combination of those two. So how many years would you say that you've been actually working on cars, say up to today?
I started 12, 13, working on with my dad. As far as in the field as a professional, since like 2011, I did go to ATI, Advanced Technology Institute in Virginia Beach. Graduated there, and all through my schooling there, I was working at a local shop, working on European vehicles.
Okay, well, speaking of European vehicles, what type of engines, maybe not necessarily European, but what types of engines have you been working on that you're familiar with?
I'm familiar with the MG platform, so most of the motors that came in, the MGs, the Triumphs, Austin Healey's, Austin Sprites, stuff like that. I've rebuilt Porsche engines and Volkswagen motors as well. And I got a lot of knowledge in, classic American engines, so, small block Chevrolets, small block Fords, Oldsmobiles, stuff like that. A lot of the classic engines I've had a ton of work with. And then even some of the modern stuff when we get into like newer BMWs, Mini Coopers, even some newer Mercedes and everything like that as well.
Which ones do you like working on the most, and why? I mean, is it because it's a challenge, or because you just like the engine?
For my personal favorite to work on all the time are small block Chevrolets, being the availability of parts, the familiarity with them, and the immense knowledge base that's out there to do performance upgrades and stuff like that. But then next to that is MG engines, because that 4-cylinder, I've worked on a ton of them, and I've tuned up carburetors like that, and it's always interesting. They're all the same engine, but how in each different car they go into, the different performance aspects you can get out of them.
Okay, and it's interesting that you say the 4-cylinder, because you can trace 4 cylinders all the way back to the early 1920s.
Yeah.
There were some cars that just had 2 cylinders, and a 4-cylinder car was like unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
Because the 4-cylinder, that went up to 60 miles an hour.
Yep.
So yeah, I could definitely relate to that. Now, with the British cars again, we obviously have the classics, like you're working on my Rolls-Royce, and the Bentleys, and so on and so forth. And then the British sports cars, the TR6s, TR7s, Triumphs, and so on and so forth. Where did that knowledge come from?
A lot of that came from the shop I worked at when I was going through college and straight out of college. It was a European cars place. They worked on pretty much all the newer stuff, but I always had a passion for older cars. And I was talking to the owner one day, and I was like, I really like working on older cars. He's like, well, we don't tend to do that here, but I know enough people with them around that if they want to bring them by, we'll work on them. And then it came into it again with me and my dad. He bought an MGB, and we got it. No sooner did we get it that we pulled the motor out of it, was rebuilding it and working on that, and and that's where a lot of my hands-on stuff comes from. Personal vehicles I've owned, and just whatever work needed to be done on it, I just went after it.
Right. Are you listening to that, Richard? Okay. Now, let me ask you this question. What made you decide to take the plunge and open your own place?
The places I had worked at, it was time to leave, and I decided that I've always wanted my own shop, and I started it out of the driveway at the house, and did mobile repair, going to people's houses, working on their cars. And a lot of that time I did some classics at that time, but a lot of it was just normal routine maintenance on newer stuff. And I got a phone call. I had put some feelers out to get a shop to find one, and I got a phone call one day about this building here, and I called the owner immediately.
Was that Rodney?
That was Rodney. I called him. I got a phone call Friday at lunchtime. I called him immediately, and I met him Friday afternoon and went to this place and pulled the trigger to get it.
Okay, and just for you to know, we will be meeting Rodney. Rodney actually is at the other side of this whole group of bays, and he is where I got my tires, because that's his specialty. He has tires, and he owns all these bays. Maybe we were both in the wrong business.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. First thing, thanks for your time. I know you're very busy. Trust me, I know you're busy. Let's go outside and let's explain some of these banners and look at one or two of your cars.
Sounds great.
Okay, let's go.
So as James was talking about before, I got some banners here in the shop of companies that I like to use a lot for custom work and high performance work as well. The first one here is Russell's Performance. They provide hose ends, brake lines, fuel lines, coolant lines, a variety of fittings and everything like that. And then the next one here over here would be Comp Cams. They sell upgraded valve train components as far as camshaft, rocker arms, push rods, lifters, everything along those lines. Another one is MSD. They sell ignition parts. So I like to use on a lot of the old plastic cars is I'll use MSD wiring, ignition boxes, stuff like that to kind of upgrade them. Bring them from like a point system into a more modern system using electronics. Another one is Dart engine components. They make aftermarket engine blocks, cylinder heads for a variety of applications out there. Those are the big ones I use a lot. And then the other one over here is K&N filters, using their air filters and stuff like that as well. And then let's see, if we go on the other side of this car here, which on this one is we're doing some custom exhaust work on this. Another company I use is Nitrous Express for when you want to go fast. Nitrous is a cheap and fast, easy way to do it. So, and then cars that we kind of got here in the shop is I got this 71 Cutlass over here that's going to end up getting a LS motor in it. A 6L80E transmission. We're upgrading all the suspension components to tubular control arms, upgrading the 4-bar setup in the rear. We're going to use a quick performance 4 9-inch rear end, putting a posi track in it so both tires spin now instead of just the one. That's the next long-term project that's going to go on in here. Then back over here, this body shell is a 1961 MGA body. That it needs some sheet metal work. We're gonna redo the rockers on it. These pillars here need some work on them. There's some holes in the trunk and everything like that. This got shipped off, sandblasted here locally down in Yorktown. So once I got it back from them, then we'll start working on doing the sheet metal work. And then another vehicle that we've been working on here is this 46 Willis CJ2A. This one I've rebuilt the tailgate on it, had to redo some of the fenders. We ended up putting a whole new body on it just because come to find out we sent it all off to get sandblasted and I got 3/4 of a car back. So we decided that the best route for that would be is buy a new body tub and start from that. I went through and redid the entire chassis on it, so new leaf springs, new brakes, rebuilt both front and rear axles. We went through the motor, resealed everything on it, resealed the transmission and transfer case on it, inspected all the parts to make sure everything was good with it. This one actually runs and drives at the moment, other than finishing up the wiring for all the lights and everything.